The moment I told my stepmother I'd signed the papers, giving up my share of my father's company, she didn't say a word. She just smiled. Not the kind of smile that means relief. The kind that means she'd won. My name is Veda Calloway. I'm 31 years old, and 6 months ago, I walked away from a seven-figure inheritance because a woman who never once called me by my first name told me it was the right thing to do for the family. I almost believed her. I would have, if my father's accountant hadn't called me at 11:45 on a Tuesday night and said four words that changed everything. Don't sign anything yet. His name was Raymond Chu. He'd worked for my father for 19 years. He knew where every dollar lived, and apparently, he'd known for a long time that something in my father's estate wasn't adding up. I need to back up. My father, Howard, built a commercial real estate firm from a single leased office in Columbus, Ohio. He did it the slow way. Handshakes, late nights, one building at a time over 30 years. When he died of a stroke 14 months ago, the company was worth roughly $9 million. I was his only biological child. He'd remarried when I was 17, and my stepmother had two sons from her first marriage who were technically adults, but had never held a job for longer than 8 months combined. Everyone in the family knew this. No one talked about it. What I didn't know was that my father had set up a trust the year before he died. Raymond knew. The estate attorney knew. My stepmother definitely knew. I found out by accident, from a document that fell out of a folder my stepmother left on the kitchen counter of my father's house the weekend of the memorial service. I picked it up without thinking. I read 2 sentences. I put it back. I didn't sleep that night. The document referenced a trust amendment. My name wasn't in it. My stepmother's was, and so were her sons. I told myself I'd misread it. I told myself grief does strange things to the mind. I drove home to Cincinnati and spent 3 weeks convincing myself there was a reasonable explanation. Then Raymond called. He didn't say much that first night. He asked if I had an attorney I trusted. I said I had a college friend who did contract law. Nothing like this. He gave me a name. A woman named Petra Solano, a state litigation specialist. 20 years of experience. No warmth whatsoever in her voice when she picked up the phone. I liked her immediately. Petra told me not to contact my stepmother, not to ask questions, not to let anyone in my father's family know I'd spoken to Raymond or to her. Then she said something that felt insane at the time. I want you to call your stepmother and tell her you've decided to cooperate fully. Tell her you're ready to sign whatever she needs you to sign. She'll think I've given up. Exactly, Petra said. I didn't understand it. I said so. Petra was quiet for a moment and then told me that in her experience, people who believe they've already won stop being careful. They get sloppy, they move fast. And when they move fast, they leave tracks. Right now, she said, your stepmother thinks she's managing you. Let her keep thinking that. Watch what she does next. I made the call the following morning. My stepmother sounded almost warm for the first time since my father's funeral. She called me sweetheart. She used my name. She said she was so relieved that she knew we could get through this together, that my father would have wanted everyone to be taken care of. I said, of course. I said I just wanted to do the right thing. I said I'd come up to Columbus the following Saturday. I hung up and sat on my bathroom floor for 10 minutes. That Saturday changed everything. When I pulled into the driveway of my father's house. My father's house, the one he'd bought with money he earned. The one I'd grown up visiting every summer. My stepmother's older son was already there. He was leaning against a car I didn't recognize. New, expensive. He nodded at me like we were acquaintances at a company retreat. Inside, the dining room table was covered in documents. My stepmother sat at the head of it. Her estate attorney sat beside her. He didn't stand when I came in. He just slid a stack of papers across the table and said, "We appreciate you coming. This shouldn't take long." There were 6 documents. Each new tabs marking where I was supposed to sign. My stepmother explained them. with the tone of someone reading terms and conditions out loud. Bored. Practiced. Not really expecting questions. The first one was a disclaimer of interest in the trust. The second was a release of any claims against the estate. The third one, I didn't fully understand, but the phrase, waiver of heirship rights, was in the header. The rest I didn't get to read carefully, because her attorney kept pointing to the signature lines and saying, "And here? And here." I picked up the pen. I set it back down. I said, "Can I use the restroom first?" My stepmother smiled. "Of course, sweetheart." In the hallway bathroom, I texted Petra one word. "Now." Then I went back to the table and sat down and waited. 4 minutes later, the front door opened. Petra walked in like she owned the building, which, as she would shortly explain, was actually more my father's intention than anyone at that table had been led to believe. My stepmother's attorney stood up. "Who are you?" "Petra Solano. I represent Veda Calloway's interests in this estate." She set her bag on the table, not next to me, at the center, between everyone, and pulled out a folder that was almost comically thicker than the stack they'd given me. "Before we go any further, I'd like to discuss the trust amendment dated March of last year." The room went very still. My stepmother's voice came out measured. "Careful. That amendment was executed legally. Howard signed it of his own." "He did," Petra said. "I'm not disputing the signature. I'm disputing the circumstances under which it was obtained. And I'm also disputing the characterization of this estate that you've been presenting to my client." She opened the folder, specifically the private account your husband opened, in your name, 18 months before he died, into which he deposited $412,000 of company funds classified internally as consulting fees, paid to a consulting firm that doesn't appear to have ever provided any services. Silence. My stepmother's attorney leaned toward her and said something low that I couldn't hear. She shook her head slightly. "That's taken out of." "The invoices are in here," Petra said simply, tapping the folder, "along with the emails." Along with the emails, along with a statement from Raymond Chu, who was present for at least 3 of the discussions in which those transfers were authorized. She paused. "Raymond, as you may recall, has been with your husband's company for nearly 2 decades. He kept very thorough records." My stepmother looked at me for the first time since Petra had walked in. Her expression wasn't anger, not yet. It was the look of someone recalculating. "Veda," she said, "you have to understand. Your father wanted to make sure his family was taken care of. All of his family. The boys have struggled. You have your career, your life in Cincinnati. He just wanted to. He wanted to take care of me too," I said. I was surprised by how steady my voice was. "He told me that. He said it the last time I saw him, in this house, sitting in that chair." I pointed toward the living room, toward the old leather chair by the window that still smelled like him. "Are you telling me the trust amendment that cuts me out was also part of taking care of me?" She didn't answer. Petra slid a new set of documents across the table. Clean pages. Different headers. "What you're looking at," Petra said, "is a formal accounting request, which we'll be filing Monday morning if we don't reach a resolution today. It will trigger a court-supervised audit of every financial transaction connected to this estate going back 5 years. Every account, every transfer, every consulting invoice." She let that land. "Alternatively, we can discuss restoring Veda's position as co-beneficiary of the trust as originally drafted before the amendment, and address the missing funds through a structured repayment agreement that keeps this matter private." I could see her jaw tighten. My stepmother's younger son, who had been silent in the corner the entire time, said, "Mom, maybe we should just—" "Don't," she said sharply. Then, quieter, "Don't." She looked at the documents Petra had placed in front of her. She looked at me, and I saw something in her face that I hadn't seen before. Not malice, not calculation, just something tired, like she'd been holding something heavy for a very long time and had just realized she was going to have to put it down. Her attorney asked for 10 minutes. Petra said 5. He took 5. When they came back, the conversation was different. Shorter sentences. More direct. The word resolution came up more than once. The signing that happened that afternoon was not my stepsister had planned. The paperwork she'd set out for me. The disclaimers, the releases, the waiver of heirship stayed unsigned on the table. What got signed was an agreement restoring my position as beneficiary of the original trust. A commitment to a forensic accounting review of the consulting transfers. A repayment schedule for the funds that had moved into my stepmother's personal account. She signed with a pen that shook slightly. Her attorney signed underneath her. Her older son sat in the hallway the entire time and didn't come back into the room. I didn't feel triumphant when it was over. I want to be honest about that, because I've seen enough of these stories to know the ending is supposed to feel a certain way. Like justice, cleans and obvious. Like a door closing on something that deserved to be closed. What I actually felt was tired, and sad in a specific, sharp way. The kind that doesn't have anything to do with money. Because what Petra found in those documents, what Raymond had quietly preserved across 19 years of meticulous records, was something I hadn't expected. My father had known. Not everything. Not the full scope of what his wife had been doing with the company accounts. But he'd known something was off. He'd written about it. There were emails between him and Raymond in the last year of his life, cautious ones, careful ones, asking questions about figures that didn't reconcile. He'd been trying to figure it out. He ran out of time. Raymond told me this in the parking lot after everyone else had left. He was still in the same gray sweater he'd had on at my father's funeral. He said, "My father talked about me more than I probably knew, that he worried about me in the way quiet fathers worry. Not out loud, not directly, but consistently, persistently, in the background of everything else." I had to look away when he said that. Before he got in his car, Raymond handed me an envelope. Old, letter-sized, my name written on the front in my father's handwriting, the particular slanted print he used when he was being deliberate about something. And inside was a single folded piece of paper. A note, dated 8 months before he died. He said he didn't know if I'd ever need to read it. He said he hoped I wouldn't. But he wanted me to know that he'd always seen me more clearly than it might have seemed. That the company, the buildings, the work. It was always partly for me, that whatever happened after he was gone, he wanted me to know the foundation was mine. That he'd tried to make sure, at the bottom, in smaller writing, almost as an afterthought. The original trust documents are with Raymond. He knows what to do. I sat in my car in that driveway for a long time. The court process took 7 more months. There were negotiations, revisions, a few very unpleasant phone calls. My stepmother's attorney tried twice to renegotiate terms. Petra shut it down both times in under a paragraph. My stepmother and I don't speak. Her sons don't either. But honestly, that's not new. We were never close. I don't know if what she did came from desperation, or entitlement, or some combination of both. I stopped trying to figure it out somewhere around month 3, when Petra told me that the why doesn't actually help you, and the what is the only thing that matters legally, anyway. What matters legally? I am now the primary beneficiary of my father's trust. The real estate portfolio that he spent 30 years building is, in large part, mine to steward. Raymond agreed to stay on as a consultant through the transition. We have lunch occasionally. He orders the same thing every time and refuses to let me pay. What matters to me personally is harder to name. I think about my father a lot more than I expected to. Not with anger, not exactly. More like with the particular ache of realizing someone understood you better than they ever said out loud. And that you found out too late. To tell them you understood them too. The house in Columbus sold 6 weeks ago. It was the right decision, practically speaking. It didn't feel right. Exactly. But few correct things do. A resource being coming back to. The thing I couldn't have told you 14 months ago, when I was standing at my father's grave, trying to hold it together. is that the people who tried to take from me did me an accidental favor. They forced a reckoning. They made me learn things about my father's life that I wouldn't have known otherwise. They made Raymond pick up the phone, and they underestimated the one thing my father spent 30 years quietly trying to teach me: that the most important documents are the ones you actually read before you sign them.